as if pushing me out would somehow shatter me. I exhaled, set the keys gently on the table, and walked away. By morning, his high-powered attorney was yelling at him, "Do you even understand what you just allowed her to do?" "We need to talk about the house." At exactly 7 a.m., Blake's voice cut through the silence, and I found him seated in my office chair, fully dressed, briefcase at his feet, like a man who had somewhere important to be. My financial documents were spread neatly across the desk: bank statements, mortgage records, the deed, all arranged like exhibits in a courtroom. "I've crunched some numbers," he said, flipping open a legal pad covered in figures. "We need to establish who really owns what in this marriage." The briefcase was new, brown leather with combination locks, the kind carried by men who want to appear powerful in meetings they'll never attend. He'd settled in behind my desk like it belonged to him, my desk in the office where I'd built Cassidy Blackwood Consulting from scratch into a 7-figure company. Morning light streamed in, catching the dust in the air between us, and I noticed he'd moved aside my awards to make space for his legal pad. "Sign or get out," he said with a smirk, waving papers in a house I paid for in full. I stared at the pad. "You went through my filing cabinet." It wasn't a question. The locked cabinet where I stored originals, contracts worth millions, client materials under strict NDAs. "Our filing cabinet," Blake corrected, tapping the pad with his pencil. "Marriage is a partnership, Cassidy. 50-50, that's what my attorney says." His attorney. The words sat between us as I looked at the man I'd married 4 years ago. Blake wore the charcoal suit I bought him for a job interview he never went to, claiming the company didn't match his vision. His hair was slicked back with the expensive pomade from my drawer. Even his posture was different, straight, practiced, like he'd been rehearsing this conversation for weeks. I stepped closer, taking in the way he'd sorted the papers: mortgage statements showing every payment I made, tax records all in my name, the deed signed 2 years before Blake and I even met, bought with inheritance money from my grandmother, who worked 3 jobs to save it. "Your attorney," I echoed, picking up the Harrison Industries contract he'd shoved to the corner. That single deal had made more money than Blake had earned in his lifetime. The same Blake who just last month called lawyers parasites when I hired Rachel to review our expansion plans. He shifted in my chair, my ergonomic chair that cost more than his gym membership. "That was different," he said. "This is about protecting our interests." Our interests. I set down the contract and picked up his legal pad. His handwriting was uneven, like a child's first attempt at cursive. At the top, marital assets, followed by a list of everything I owned, including items from before our marriage: my grandmother's jewelry, the Vermont cabin my father left me, the original artwork I bought after closing my first $1 million deal. Blake stood, moving around the desk to face me directly. "I've contributed to this marriage, Cassidy. While you built your business, I maintained our home. I supported you, maintained our home. I thought of the roof I'd hired a contractor to repair, one Blake never even noticed was leaking. The landscapers I paid for because Blake's idea of yard work was hiring local kids who never came. The cleaners who showed up twice a week while Blake was out at business lunches with partners who had no actual businesses." "Is that what you told your attorney?" I asked, spotting a Garrett and Associates card poking out from beneath the mortgage papers. "That you maintained the home while I worked?" "I've made sacrifices," Blake said, his voice a bit louder now. "I put my career on hold for this marriage. The career that never existed, the the consulting agency with zero clients, the app company that never built anything, the investment advisory firm that never had a single investor, because Blake never had a plan, just a performance. He never got the proper licenses and never seemed interested in trying. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden I designed and paid for, where I'd planted rose bushes from my grandmother's yard after she passed. She was the one who left me the inheritance that let me buy this house back when Blake was still living in his brother's basement, talking about potential and opportunity while staying up all night playing video games. "This house is mine, Blake," I said quietly, watching Mr. Patterson walk his beagle past our driveway. My driveway. It had always been mine, long before Blake. The deed was in my name alone. I'd paid every mortgage installment, every repair, every renovation. "We're married," Blake said, as if those two words erased years of documentation. The law says premarital assets remain separate unless commingled," I cut in, turning back to face him. "And I've made sure they never were." Blake's expression twisted. He grabbed a stack of bank statements and waved them at me. "These show joint transfers. You moved money into our shared account every month for groceries, bills, your personal expenses." "All documented," I said, "all separate from the mortgage and property taxes, which I pay from my business account." He slammed the papers onto the desk, his polished demeanor starting to crack. "I deserve something for the last 4 years. You can't just—" "Can't what, Blake?" I lifted the deed and held it up to the light. "Can't own what I paid for with inherited money? Can't keep the house I've supported while you were out networking, having lunches, going to the gym?" He grabbed his briefcase, fumbling with the combination locks, probably set just yesterday. "This isn't over. Thomas Garrett is one of the best divorce lawyers in the state." I raised an eyebrow. "Thomas Garrett? The one who advertises on bus benches? I've seen his signs. Bright yellow, terrible kerning. He's been suspended twice for ethics violations." Blake's face went pale. "How do you—" "I run a consulting firm, Blake. I do research. That's how successful businesses operate. I began collecting my documents, placing them back in proper order. Something you might know if any of your projects ever made it past a pitch deck." He stood there, clutching the briefcase like a shield. The morning light softened his features, made him look younger, almost like the man I'd met 4 years ago at that conference. The man who spoke of dreams and ambition, who made me believe partnership was about more than just money. "We'll see what happens once the papers are filed," he said, heading toward the door. "You might be surprised what a good lawyer can pull off." I sat down in my chair, still warm from where he'd been sitting, and opened my email. 3 new client inquiries, a contract renewal from Morrison Group, and a flagged message from Rachel Thornton marked urgent. "Read immediately. My attorney, my real attorney, one of the best in the state. She'd been preparing for this day for months." "Blake," I said just as he reached the doorway. He paused, a flicker of hope flashing across his face. "The locks will be changed before you get home tonight." They wouldn't be changed for another 6 hours, but that wasn't my most pressing concern. 20 minutes later, Emma knocked gently on the office door, clutching a folder I normally reviewed myself. One look at her face and my stomach dropped. "I wasn't sure if I should bring this to you directly," she said, setting the folder on my desk with hesitation. Emma had worked for me for 3 years, hired fresh out of business school, and I'd never seen her look this uncomfortable. "Blake picked these up from accounting yesterday, said he was helping with the monthly review." I opened the folder, flipping through the credit card statements. It was all routine until I reached page 3. There it was, tucked between a lunch meeting and office supplies. Garrett and Associates, $2,500 retainer, dated 3 weeks ago. The same day Blake surprised me with flowers and dinner at my favorite restaurant, said he wanted to celebrate my latest contract win. Emma, I said, keeping my tone even while fury built like fire under my ribs. Did Blake say anything when he picked these up? She shifted uncomfortably. He'd mentioned something about wanting to understand the business better. Said he wanted to be more involved in your success. She paused, then added softly, he also asked if I knew how corporate assets were handled in partnerships. I assumed he meant business partnerships. Naturally, he did. Blake, who couldn't even balance his own checking account, suddenly interested in corporate asset division. I flipped through more pages, spotting 2 more consultations charged to our joint account, one with a real estate assessor, the other with a man named Bradley Kingston, whose LinkedIn profile revealed him as a business valuator specializing in privately held companies. My phone rang precisely at 12:30 p.m., Blake's name flashing on the screen alongside a wedding photo of us, both smiling at something off camera. I remembered that moment, my cousin making silly faces, trying to get us to laugh naturally for the photographer. We looked happy, oblivious that one of us was capable of such calculated betrayal. Hi, sweetheart. Blake's voice carried a strange, scripted energy, as if reading from cue cards. What time will you be home tonight? I'm planning something special for dinner. Blake didn't cook. In 4 years, his culinary achievements amounted to burnt toast and occasionally reheating takeout. Something special? We need to talk about our future, he said, paper rustling in the background, mentioning changes to benefit both of us. His words sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced in front of the bathroom mirror this morning after I left. I pictured him standing there gesturing at his reflection, trying different tones until he sounded authoritative rather than desperate. I'll be home by 7. I lied, already rearranging my schedule. Should I pick up wine? No, I've got everything covered. Another first. Blake managing something beyond his gym routine was notable. Just bring yourself. After he hung up, I sat in my office, weighed down by what was coming. The man who needed detailed coffee maker instructions was orchestrating something he thought was clever. The same person who forgot our anniversary twice was suddenly detailed enough to hire lawyers and valuators without telling me. My phone rang again. This time it was my mother. Her Florida number brought a different kind of dread. Mom never called during business hours unless something was wrong. Cassidy, honey, I'm confused about something, she said abruptly. Blake called this morning, asking about your father's Vermont cabin. Wanted to know if the deed was in your name or still part of the estate. The cabin, 2 acres of pristine lakefront property my father left me 5 years ago. Blake had been there once, complained about the lack of Wi-Fi the entire weekend and swore never to return. What did you tell him? Nothing specific, but he was insistent. Said he was helping you organize family assets for tax purposes. She hesitated, uncertainty clear in her voice. Since when does Blake care about taxes? Last Christmas he didn't even know what a W-2 was. Mom, did he ask about anything else? Your grandmother's jewelry? Whether it had been appraised or documented? Her voice hardened. Cassidy, that boy has attended exactly 1 family gathering in 4 years. Now he's calling me about property deeds and appraisals. Blake was at his brother's bachelor party during Dad's funeral. He missed Grandma's 90th birthday for a networking retreat that turned out to be a golf weekend. He never showed interest in my family, beyond asking if there were trust funds he should know about. Don't tell him anything else, Mom. If he calls again, send him to me. Already done. I told him my memory isn't what it used to be. She chuckled darkly. My memory's fine. I remember exactly what I think of men who plan their attacks while pretending to love you. After Mom hung up, I made my own call. Rachel Thornton answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional despite it being her personal line. Cassidy, I wondered when you'd call. You were expecting this? I've been expecting it since Blake showed up at the Harrington Charity Gala last month, chatting up divorce attorneys during cocktail hour. Word travels fast in legal circles. I thought back to that night. Blake had vanished for an hour, claiming he was networking. I'd been too busy securing a donation for the women's shelter to care where he went. Rachel's fingers danced across her keyboard as she spoke. Let me pull up your files. The CBW Holdings Trust, established 2 years before your marriage, the house titled Exclusively to the Trust. Your business incorporated separately, you as sole proprietor, premarital assets all documented, never mixed with marital funds. So I'm protected? Better than protected? You're bulletproof, legally speaking. She paused and I could hear her smile through the phone. Blake can hire every attorney from here to Manhattan. The paperwork's airtight. Then why do I feel like I'm losing something? Rachel's voice softened. Because you are. You're losing the illusion of who you thought you married. That's often harder than losing money. What do you recommend? Let him play his hand. Document everything. Every conversation, every financial move, every meeting with his bargain basement lawyer. Her tone sharpened again. Back to business. Men like Blake always overplay when they think they're winning. Their egos become their downfall. I thought about Blake sitting in my office chair this morning, arranging my papers like props in his little performance. The new briefcase, the practiced posture, the rehearsed lines. He wasn't just planning a divorce, he was staging a takeover. Rachel, he's planning something tonight, a dinner to discuss our future. Then give him the performance he expects. Let him think you're unsuspecting. The more confident he feels, the more mistakes he'll make. She paused. And Cassidy, record everything. Missouri is a one-party consent state. Your phone in your pocket is perfectly legal. I hung up feeling steadier, though somehow sadder. That morning, Blake was my disappointing husband. By afternoon, he was my opponent. Tonight, he'd reveal himself as something worse, a man who spent years sleeping beside me while plotting his betrayal, rehearsing his lines in the mirror, convinced he could take everything I built because he'd watched me build it. I arrived home exactly at 7 o'clock, phone recording in my jacket pocket. The weight of it a small comfort against what was coming. The house smelled wrong, like soy sauce and something synthetic. Blake had ordered Chinese food, but not from our usual place. This came from the cheap joint by the highway, the one we tried once and vowed never to return to after finding a hair in the rice. He'd set the dining room table with my grandmother's Wedgwood china, the delicate blue and white plates she'd brought from England in 1952. We'd used them exactly twice in 4 years, our first anniversary and the night my biggest client signed a 5-year contract extension. Blake had complained both times about hand washing them, said it was pretentious to own dishes you couldn't just toss in the dishwasher. Now he moved around my kitchen with unfamiliar purpose, plating orange chicken and beef broccoli onto porcelain that had survived 2 world wars across 3 generations, only to be used as props in Blake's little performance. He'd even lit candles, the expensive ones I saved for power outages, and dimmed the lights to what he probably thought was atmospheric but actually made the room feel like a funeral parlor. "Sit," he said, gesturing to my usual chair while he remained standing, a manila folder tucked under his arm. He changed into a different suit, navy this time, also purchased with my credit card during last year's failed job hunt. "We need to have an honest conversation about our marriage." I sat, noticing how he'd positioned himself between me and the door. Classic move, probably a suggestion from his bargain basement attorney. Establish dominance, control the exit, make her feel trapped. What neither Blake nor his bus bench lawyer understood was that I'd negotiated with corporate executives who ate intimidation tactics for breakfast. Blake cleared his throat and launched into what was clearly a prepared speech. "Cassidy, we've grown apart. Our paths have diverged in ways neither of us anticipated when we said our vows." He paused dramatically, the way actors do in movies. "I've been doing a lot of soul searching, attending therapy, working on myself." Therapy? That was new. Unless YouTube motivational videos counted, Blake had never set foot in a therapist's office. "I've realized that our marriage has become unbalanced. You're consumed by your work, and I've been left to manage everything else alone: the emotional labor, household management, the sacrifice of my own dreams to support yours." I reached for my water, letting him drone on while I studied his face. He'd practiced this in front of a mirror, probably multiple times. His gestures were too precise, his pauses too calculated. Even the way he placed his hands on the back of his chair was staged. "I think it's best if we separate," he continued, sliding the manila folder across the table and pushing aside a container of sweet and sour sauce. I opened it while he watched, his breathing a little faster. The first page was exactly what I expected, a joke of a legal document that looked downloaded from some template site, filled with creative interpretations of property law. He was demanding the house, citing his contributions to maintenance and improvements. He wanted alimony based on his career sacrifices. He'd even listed my business as a marital asset, claiming he'd been an unofficial consultant throughout its development. "You want half of Cassidy Blackwood Consulting?" I said, not as a question, but as confirmation of his delusion. "I've been your sounding board for every major decision," Blake said, confidence swelling. "I've attended networking events, supported your late nights, sacrificed my own entrepreneurial ventures." I flipped to the next page. He wanted my grandmother's jewelry, calling it marital gifts. The Vermont cabin was listed as joint recreational property. Even my car, bought 6 months before our wedding, was somehow a shared asset. Blake moved closer, looming over me now. "This is what's fair, Cassidy. What we built together should be divided equally." I kept reading silently, my face neutral, while inside I catalogued every ridiculous claim, every legal impossibility, every proof Blake had no clue what he'd signed that morning in my office. The papers he'd so carefully arranged on my desk had been decoys, documents I'd left accessible, knowing his curiosity would outpace his attention span. Blake's patience was fraying. "Are you going to sign?" I set down the papers and looked up. "You want the house?" "I deserve the house. I made it a home while you treated it like a hotel. And my business, our business, built during our marriage. Community property, the cabin in Vermont where we made memories as a couple." Each lie came with growing confidence, as if repetition made it true. Blake could transform fiction into fact with alarming ease. He had spent exactly one night at the Vermont cabin, complained the entire time, and left early, blaming mysterious allergic reactions to pine trees, oddly, allergies that never bothered him during Christmas visits. I picked up the pen he'd placed beside the papers, a blue Bic, not even a good one, and he stepped back, already anticipating victory. His phone was out, probably ready to brag to his brother or gym buddies about his successful negotiation. No, I said, calmly setting the pen down. Blake's face flushed. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, I'm not signing these papers. His rehearsed composure cracked like cheap paint. You have to sign them. This is what's happening. I've made my decision. Your decision? I stood slowly, matching his height in my heels. Your decision about my house, my business, my inheritance. Blake's hands clenched into fists. Our house? Our business? 4 years of marriage makes everything ours. That's not how property law works, Blake. He slammed his palm on the table, rattling the fragile china. Don't lecture me about the law. Your attorney says, your attorney who advertises on bus benches. Blake's face shifted from red to purple. He leaned in, lowering his voice into what he probably thought was menacing. You're going to sign these papers, Cassidy. You can do it voluntarily, or we can do this the hard way. The hard way? I smiled. What does that mean exactly? He straightened, pulling himself up to his full height and pointed at the door. Sign the papers or get out. This is my house now. I've established residency. I've contributed to its upkeep. Sign or pack your things and leave. The words hung heavy between us, exactly as Rachel had predicted. Blake had delivered his ultimatum, just as his cut-rate lawyer had coached him, unaware he'd just made several legal blunders in under 30 seconds, all now recorded on my phone. I picked up the pen again, and Blake visibly relaxed, a smug grin spreading across his face. I signed every page slowly, deliberately, making sure he watched each stroke. My name flowed across the signature lines with the precision I used for million-dollar contracts, each letter perfect. When I finished, I set the pen down and pulled my house keys from my pocket, placing them next to the papers with deliberate ceremony. My wedding ring followed, the platinum band I'd bought myself when Blake insisted rings were outdated symbols of ownership. The irony wasn't lost on me. I stood, grabbed my purse, and walked to the door without a word. Blake called after me, voice a mix of confusion and triumph. That's it? You're just leaving? I paused in the doorway, looking back at him, standing among takeout containers and stolen china, clutching papers he didn't understand, celebrating a victory that existed only in his mind. I said nothing. There was nothing to say that wouldn't be better delivered through legal channels. 20 minutes later, I was in Rachel's conference room, the one usually reserved for depositions and settlement talks. She'd stayed late, just as promised, with everything ready. Coffee in real cups, not the gas station paper ones Blake always grabbed. Legal documents spread neatly across the table, each section tabbed and labeled. He said it, Rachel confirmed, pulling up social media on her laptop. Word for word, sign or get out. He even pointed at the door for emphasis. Rachel's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Perfect. Now let's review what he's been posting while you were at dinner. The glow from Rachel's laptop illuminated Blake's latest Instagram post. The post had gone up just 45 minutes after I left the house. The photo showed Blake raising a beer in my living room, surrounded by his gym crew, with the caption, "New chapter starts now." Sometimes you have to remove toxic people to find your peace. Number fresh start, number my house, my rules, number leveling up. He's literally broadcasting evidence, Rachel said, methodically taking screenshots. Look at this one. She scrolled to another post where Blake had photographed my home office, now a gaming paradise. 3 monitors sat on my handcrafted desk, LED strips lined the walls I'd painted myself, and his collection of action figures replaced my achievement awards. The caption read, "Finally turning this workspace into something productive." No more corporate prison vibes. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Martinez, my neighbor 2 houses down. We weren't close, but shared a polite acquaintance. Waves during morning runs, accepting packages. Her message was brief. Blake's having quite the party. Just watched him give a tour to about 10 people. He's telling everyone you abandoned the marriage for your career. Thought you should know. Another text followed, a video attachment. Jennifer had filmed from her kitchen window, catching Blake on the front porch with his brother and several men from his gym. His voice carried clearly. She chose spreadsheets over family. I gave her an ultimatum and she literally walked out, just left. Can you believe that? 4 years supporting her ambition, and she couldn't even fight for us. I set my phone down on the hotel suite's marble bathroom counter. The Marriott downtown wasn't cheap, but I needed a base of operations that felt controlled and professional, somewhere to think without memories weighing on every corner. The suite had a separate living area with a desk where I'd already set up my laptop, preparing for what was next. Marcus Chin's name popped up on my phone. My CFO rarely called after hours unless urgent. "The transition is complete," Marcus said bluntly. "All company accounts restructured. Blake Wilson's access was terminated at 8:47 p.m. His corporate card deactivated and all automatic payments linked to it suspended pending reassignment." "How many automatic payments?" I asked. 17, including his BMW lease, gym membership, country club access, wine storage unit, and something called executive presence coaching, charging $400 a month for the past year. Executive presence coaching. Blake had called it career counseling to launch his consulting firm. I'd been funding a life coach telling him he was special while he contributed nothing but dirty dishes and empty promises. "Document everything, Marcus. Create a full audit trail, already in progress." Also, Blake tried using the corporate card 20 minutes ago at Velocity Sports Bar. Transaction declined. Of course, he tried to put his celebration on my company card, the same card he'd used for years to fund lunches with potential business partners that never materialized. My phone rang again, this time with my sister Sarah's face. The photo was from last Christmas when she'd visited from Seattle. Sarah was 3 years younger, but decades wiser when it came to reading people. She'd never liked Blake, though polite enough to hide it during family events. "What kind of manipulative garbage is Blake trying to pull?" Sarah's voice was tight with anger. "He just called me, claiming you're having some kind of breakdown, that you walked out on the marriage and need space to process your emotions. He actually suggested I encourage you to seek therapy for your workaholism. He called 20 minutes ago, sounding all concerned like the worried husband. Kept saying you chose your career over family, that he tried everything to save the marriage, but you were too focused on money to see what really mattered." I moved to the suite's window, gazing down at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Blake was celebrating in my house, spinning his version of events for anyone who'd listen. The villain narrative he'd crafted where I was the cold, calculating businesswoman who'd abandoned a loving husband. Sarah, he's trying to control the narrative before... Before what, Cassidy? What's really happening? Her voice was sharp, cutting through the distance, because the Blake who called me sounded coached, like he was reading from a script. He used words Blake doesn't know. Emotional labor, relationship equity. Since when does Blake know those terms? since his attorney fed them to him. Sarah was silent for several seconds. He's trying to take the house, isn't he? The house Grandma's money bought, among other things, that pathetic leech. 4 years of you foot in every bill while he played entrepreneur, and now he wants to steal what you built. Her voice rose. Remember when Dad was in the hospital? Where was Blake? Oh, right, at a crucial networking retreat that turned out to be a golf weekend. I remember. 3 months Dad was sick, and Blake visited once for 20 minutes, and now he's calling me about family values. She paused, softer. Do you need me to come get anything from the house? Important documents, Grandma's jewelry, anything he might damage or claim? Not yet. Let him think he's won for now. Cassidy, I know you. You're planning something. I'm not planning anything. I'm just documenting reality while Blake creates his own fantasy. After Sarah hung up, I opened my laptop and logged into our banking app. The joint account showed Blake's spending in real time. $127 at Velocity Sports Bar, declined. $84 at the liquor store, declined. $45 at the pizza place, declined. Each rejection time-stamped, creating a digital trail of Blake's collapsing celebration. A text from Emma appeared. Blake called the office asking about accessing the company portal, claimed he needed to review partnership documents. Security flagged it as unauthorized access attempt. Partnership documents. Blake, who'd never been a partner in anything except spending my money, was already trying to establish a claim to my business. His attorney must have told him to gather evidence of involvement, not realizing every login attempt, call, and text was being logged by people who actually understood documentation. My phone buzzed again. Another Instagram notification. Blake had posted a photo of my wine cellar, the one I'd custom built to store my collection of investment-grade vintages. He'd opened a 2015 Chateau Margaux bottle worth about $800 and was pouring it into red Solo cups for his gym buddies. Caption, "Life's too short for saving things for special occasions." Today is the special occasion, Rachel texted immediately. He's documenting destruction of separate property assets. Keep recording everything. The hotel room felt strange in its silence after years of Blake's constant noise. His video games, conference calls for businesses that never launched, motivational podcasts blasting at volumes that suggested success could be absorbed through decibels alone. Here, in this temporary space, I could think clearly for the first time in months. Another message arrived from the BMW dealership. Miss Blackwood, we're attempting to reach Blake Wilson regarding his lease payment. The account on file has been declined. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Blake's first stumble was beginning. Tomorrow, when he woke up hungover in my house, surrounded by empty bottles and the debris of his premature victory party, the calls would start. The gym wondering about his membership, the country club about his access card, the wine storage facility about his monthly fee. Each small failure piled up into an unstoppable avalanche of reality that no Instagram filter could ever mask. I shut my laptop and got ready for bed in sheets free from Blake's scent and untouched by the weight of shared disappointments. Tomorrow promised new developments, fresh evidence, and more mistakes, while Blake continued to celebrate a victory that existed only in his mind. Morning came with a text from Emma that made me sit upright in the hotel bed. Can we meet before the office opens? There's something I should have told you months ago. The timestamp read 5:47 a.m. Emma never messaged before 7 unless something serious was wrong. We met at a quiet coffee shop 3 blocks from my office, the kind where business deals are whispered and no one looks up from their laptops. Emma was already there, nervously shredding a napkin into tiny pieces, her usual calm nowhere to be seen. 3 months ago, at the Patterson Industries conference, she began without hesitation. I saw Blake at the Marriott downtown. You were giving your keynote while I stepped out to handle that emergency with the Chicago contract. She paused, forcing herself to meet my gaze. He was with a woman, early 20s, blonde, extremely fit. The soft jazz playing in the background faded as I absorbed her words. Blake had claimed a stomach bug kept him from the conference. I delivered my presentation to 300 industry leaders while he was just 6 blocks away. Emma kept going. I convinced myself it was a client meeting. Blake was always talking about business. Maybe he'd found an investor or partner. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through Instagram with practiced ease. Then last week I saw this. On the screen was a woman's profile, Jessica Reeves, personal trainer and fitness influencer. In recent posts, Jessica wore my diamond tennis bracelet, the same one Blake said had been sent for cleaning months ago, and my Cartier watch, an anniversary gift he claimed was lost on vacation. A gym selfie showed my grandmother's pearl necklace around Jessica's neck. "These are all yours, right?" Emma asked quietly. The pearls had been my grandmother's wedding gift from 1951. Blake said they were at the jeweler. The watch vanished from our dresser. The bracelet supposedly fell off during one of Blake's golf outings, and he'd filed an insurance claim I never questioned. Then Rachel called as I stared at Jessica's posts. "My forensic accountant found something," she said. Blake opened a secret account 4 months ago at a different branch. Only his name, using your home address. $37,000 in cash deposits. Carefully structured to avoid detection. Classic concealment. The timing matched items missing from your collection. Your grandmother's silver tea set. Your father's signed first editions. Pieces from your storage unit. Blake said he reorganized the unit for climate control, but he's been liquidating assets, building an escape fund while you paid the bills, mortgage, utilities, car, insurance, food, gym membership. You funded his lifestyle while he stole from you to fund his getaway. After hanging up, I drove home, not to confront Blake, but to talk to Mrs. Chin next door. She answered immediately, as if she'd been expecting me. Mrs. Chin was 73, sharp as a legal brief, and had lived next door long before I bought the house. She'd never liked Blake, always calling him that loud man whenever his music disrupted her afternoon tea. "I have something to show you," she said, leading me to her dining room where a laptop sat open on the polished mahogany table. My grandson installed these doorbell cameras after the package thefts last year. They record everything the footage began to play. Date stamp, 2 weeks ago, 2:47 p.m. Blake's BMW pulled into our driveway. He stepped out, circled the car, and opened the passenger door for Jessica. They laughed, his hand resting on her lower back as he guided her inside, an ease that spoke of many repeated visits. "There's more," Mrs. Chin said, clicking to another file from last month. Jessica arrived alone, carrying my house key. She walked in like she owned the place while I was in Boston at a client meeting. The timestamp showed she stayed 3 hours. Another video revealed them carrying boxes from the house to Blake's car. My boxes, my belongings, my life stolen bit by bit as I worked 14-hour days to keep the roof over their heads. Mrs. Chin apologized for not speaking up sooner, but hesitated, unsure if it was her place to interfere in marital affairs. Back at the hotel, Rachel had uncovered more about Thomas Garrett, Blake's attorney. The picture was grim. 2 bar suspensions for ethics violations, one for mishandling client funds, another for filing frivolous lawsuits. His website promised aggressive men's rights representation, but featured testimonials Rachel's investigator found to be fake. He advertises on Facebook and Craigslist, Rachel said with barely hidden contempt. His success rate was 12%. Most cases settled badly or got dismissed. Blake had chosen him through a sponsored post promising David versus Goliath victories. Perfect irony for a man so blinded by his own arrogance. Marcus Chin sent another update on Blake's finances. Executive coaching canceled for non-payment, default notices from his wine storage, and the country club suspending his membership for unpaid dues. Each domino falling exactly as expected. That evening, Jessica posted a photo wearing my grandmother's emerald ring at the restaurant where Blake had proposed 4 years ago. The caption read, "When you know, number new beginnings, number upgrade, number word. Hit great, like my life, success, and grandmother's jewelry were just placeholders until Blake could trade up for a younger model." The investigation was uncovering more than financial fraud and infidelity. It revealed a man who had seen our marriage as a business deal from the start, staying only long enough to position himself for a profitable exit. Rachel and I arrived at her office at 8 a.m., earlier than usual, to review the trust documents one last time before the inevitable calls began. Sunlight streamed through the corner windows, lighting the neat stacks of papers. 4 years of my marriage reduced to asset lists and legal jargon. At exactly 8:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with notifications from the BMW dealership. Blake's car had been repossessed from my driveway 30 minutes earlier. The tow truck driver left a notice on the front door, instructing Blake to contact financial services immediately. Blake, who rarely woke before 11, would find out soon enough, his prized status symbol gone from the garage. Emma then forwarded me an email that had bounced back from Blake's company account. The address was the one I had set up for Blake 2 years ago when he insisted he needed it for a consulting business that never took off. Now it was dead. His company email account had been terminated at midnight. Next would be his phone. Once he realized the device in his hand was just an expensive paperweight with no cellular service. At 9:15 a.m., Jennifer Martinez texted me a photo taken from her living room window. Blake stood in my driveway in pajamas, staring at the empty spot where his BMW had been, clutching the repossession notice like it was written in an unfamiliar language. Even from a distance, I could see his confusion shift to panic as he tried calling someone, anyone, only to find his phone had no service. Rachel's paralegal knocked and walked in with a fresh cup of coffee, a barely concealed smirk on her face. Mr. Wilson just tried to use the Keurig at the house. The Smart Plug app shows 5 failed remote activation attempts. He also tried the TV, sound system, and automated blinds. Everything's been disconnected from his access. The smart home system I'd installed last year, all tied to my account and controlled by my phone. Blake had mocked it as unnecessary tech, but he'd enjoyed using voice commands to adjust temperature and lighting. Now he was trapped in a house that no longer recognized him as authorized. At 9:42 a.m., Jessica Reeves updated her Instagram story, "Brunch with someone new, a man pouring champagne whose Rolex gleamed in the frame." The caption read, "When the universe removes toxic people, automatically hashtag blessed, hashtag trading up, Hashtag new energy. Blake was tagged initially, but the tag was removed within minutes. She'd already moved on. Marcus Chun called with an update on Blake's attempted transactions. He tried buying coffee at his usual spot. Declined. Attempted gas at 3 stations. Declined. Even Apple Pay linked to the corporate account terminated at midnight. Declined. Marcus paused, typing. He's currently at an ATM trying to access the joint account, which shows a zero balance after this morning's transfer. Blake's entire financial world had collapsed overnight. Every card, account, and automatic payment sustaining his lifestyle for 4 years was systematically cut off. The man who celebrated victory last night was now facing the reality that his empire rested on someone else's foundation. At 10:03 a.m., Thomas Garrett's name popped up on Rachel's phone. She put him on speaker, and before he spoke, panic was evident in his voice. Papers rustled and frantic typing filled the background. Miss Thornton, I need clarification on some documentation just brought to my attention, Garrett said, his voice higher than during his confident threats yesterday. The CBW Holdings Trust you mentioned. My client believed the property was marital asset, Garrett interrupted. Your client signed documents acknowledging the property belonged to the trust. Rachel replied coolly, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. His signature is on 7 pages affirming understanding of the ownership, but Garrett faltered. There may have been some confusion about the implications of those signatures. Rachel pulled up the documents. Mr. Wilson signed a separation agreement demanding sole rights to property he knew was owned by my client's trust. That's documentary fraud, Mr. Garrett. I'd think someone claiming expertise in a property division would understand the gravity. The typing stopped. Garrett's breathing quickened as he absorbed the impact, then muffled conversation, apparently with someone else in his office. I need to review this with my client, Garrett finally said, his voice strained. There seems to be a misunderstanding about property ownership. There's no misunderstanding, Rachel said calmly. Your client tried to claim ownership of property he never legally held, using documents he forged while planning to exploit it commercially through short-term rentals. We have his social media posts, rental listings, and his signed acknowledgement that he fully understood the trust's structure. Should I send you the evidence file? Another pause, this one longer. Then Garrett's voice, barely restrained, speaking to someone else in his office but clearly audible over the phone. Get Blake Wilson on the line right now. We heard the speakerphone click on in Garrett's office, then Blake's voice, panicked and angry. Tom, what's going on? My car's gone. My cards don't work. I can't even make coffee in my own house. It's not your house, Garrett replied flatly. It never was. What are you talking about? I have the separation agreement. She signed it. She gave me the house. Garrett finally lost his composure, his voice rising nearly to a shout, forgetting Rachel and I were still listening. Do you have any idea what you just allowed her to do? You signed documents claiming ownership of property held in a trust established before your marriage. You committed documentary fraud, Blake. She didn't give you anything. You gave her the evidence to bury you. The silence that followed was total. We could hear Blake's shallow, rapid breaths through the speaker as reality broke through his delusions. Rachel muted our side, and we listened as Garrett grew more agitated, explaining the catastrophic legal position Blake had trapped himself in. The property was never marital. Your social media posts prove intent to defraud. The separation agreement you made her sign is worthless because you can't transfer ownership of what you never owned. By claiming exclusive rights, you admitted in writing you understood the trust's structure while trying to steal it. Blake's reply was barely audible, his manufactured confidence gone. But you said possession is 9/10 of the law. You said if I established residency, that was before I knew about the trust, before I saw your posts about turning it into a rental, before you signed documents confirming your understanding of the ownership. Garrett was now in full panic. You must vacate immediately today before she files criminal charges. Rachel unmuted our line. Mr. Garrett, we're prepared to give your client 72 hours to leave as long as he doesn't damage property or remove items not belonging to him. After that, we will begin formal eviction and criminal fraud proceedings. Garrett's panicked voice echoed through Rachel's office as Blake shouted something about squatters' rights and tenancy laws in the background. The call ended abruptly with Garrett saying he needed to review case law immediately. Rachel closed her laptop, satisfied, looking at me across her mahogany desk. The eviction notice will be served at 7 tomorrow morning, she said, pulling up the sheriff's portal. Deputy Martinez is briefed. He's handled dozens of cases like this where someone claims ownership without legal right. The next morning, from my hotel window, I watched the sun bathe downtown in golden light. At exactly 7 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Martinez, my vigilant neighbor, including a video of Deputy Martinez walking up my driveway in his uniform, carrying official papers that would start Blake's removal. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Blake's number flashed on the screen, calling from a landline after his cell was cut off. I answered on the third ring, keeping my voice steady and neutral. Cassidy, we need to address this situation, Blake began, his voice lacking its usual rehearsed confidence. This has spiraled out of control. Perhaps we should sit down and talk this through like adults. We already talked, Blake. You handed me separation papers demanding my house, my business, and my inherited assets. I signed exactly what you asked. That was just negotiation tactics. You know how lawyers operate. They always start high. His voice wavered slightly, desperation creeping in. We could resolve this ourselves. Maybe try counseling. Remember how good things were at the start? The start when Blake portrayed himself as an ambitious entrepreneur, temporarily between ventures, someone seeking the right partner to realize his potential. I had mistaken his confidence for competence, his dreams for plans, and his promises for potential. Blake, the CBW Holdings Trust was established 2 years before we met. Every mortgage payment came from my business account. You signed documents confirming your understanding of the ownership structure. There's nothing left to negotiate. His tone shifted abruptly from conciliatory to hostile. You set me up. You knew exactly what you were doing. This marriage was just a business deal to you. The marriage was real, Blake. You didn't contribute financially for years, no household bills, no mortgage payments, not even groceries unless purchased on my credit card. I supported you emotionally, managed our home, and sacrificed my career. His voice rose, echoing lines likely fed by his attorney. You played video games while I worked 14-hour days. You went to the gym while I negotiated million-dollar contracts. You had affairs while I was at conferences earning the money you spent. I kept my tone steady and factual, devoid of emotion. You sacrificed nothing because you never had anything to sacrifice. Silence stretched before Blake's voice returned, now softer, almost pleading. Where am I supposed to go? I have no money. My car's been repossessed. You've ruined my life. Your brother is coming with a moving truck this afternoon. You have 72 hours to remove your belongings, anything you actually own, not items bought with my money or claimed as mine. At 2 p.m., Blake's brother Daniel arrived with a U-Haul truck that seemed far too large for Blake's possessions. Watching through Mrs. Chin's security camera, I saw Daniel helping Blake carry out his belongings. The gaming chair bought with last year's consulting bonus, which was actually my quarterly dividend, the exercise equipment from his fitness influencer phase, funded by my annual bonus, and the vision boards created during his life coach certification, a program I paid for, but he never completed. Jennifer Martinez sent updates throughout the afternoon. They're arguing over the TV, she texted. Blake insists it's his, but Daniel just showed him the receipt on your credit card statement. 20 minutes later, a text showed Blake gesturing wildly in the driveway at neighbors pretending to check mail or water soggy gardens. Mrs. Chin sat on her porch sipping tea, watching intently. Mr. Patterson walked his beagle past the house 3 times, each pass slower than before. Blake tried to claim the Peloton bike, arguing he was the sole user. Daniel physically stopped him, pointing out the credit card statement showed it was purchased with my company card. The wine refrigerator sparked another dispute until Daniel pulled up the purchase history, proving it predated Blake's arrival in my life. By 4 p.m., the truck held a pitifully small collection of possessions. Blake's clothes, most of which I had purchased but chose not to dispute. The stack of self-help books and business guides that had never translated into actual ventures. The plaques and certificates from his various online courses and certifications, trophies of potential that had never turned into productivity. Rachel called as they were loading the last boxes. The forensic accounting report is complete. Want to hear the total? Tell me. Over 4 years, Blake Wilson contributed exactly $0 to household expenses. He spent $342,768 of your money on what he classified as business development, networking, and professional advancement. She paused, flipping pages. This includes $47,000 in gym and fitness expenses, $83,000 in restaurant bills for meetings with potential partners who never materialized, $31,000 in online courses and certifications he never finished, $45,000 in travel for conferences where he claimed to be building a network, and the rest is personal shopping, entertainment, and cash withdrawals coinciding with his visits to Jessica. Every penny documented, every transaction tracked. If he tries to claim any financial interest in your assets, this report proves he was essentially a dependent, contributing nothing while depleting marital resources. I thought of the many evenings I came home exhausted from client meetings to find Blake on the couch, planning his next big venture while I paid for his dreams and delusions. $342,000 over 4 years. That money could have funded scholarships, supported women's shelters, or helped struggling entrepreneurs launch real businesses. Daniel knocked on several more doors as the afternoon wore on, searching for boxes, tape, or bubble wrap. Blake stood by the truck, shoulders slumped, watching his life shrink into a space smaller than my walk-in closet. The man who tried to steal my house was being evicted with barely enough possessions to fill a studio apartment. His empire laid bare as borrowed luxuries and stolen dreams. The U-Haul disappeared around the corner at 5:47 p.m., carrying Blake's meager belongings and oversized delusions. I lingered in Mrs. Chen's driveway, watching the empty street where my marriage had just been packed away in boxes smaller than my quarterly tax payments. Then I returned to my house with the locksmith I'd scheduled for 6 o'clock sharp. Robert from Secure Home Systems had installed the smart locks 2 years ago, locks Blake never learned to program properly. He worked methodically, replacing every lock, reprogramming every code. His professional silence was a comfort after days of legal battles and emotional confrontations. "All set, Miss Blackwood," Robert said, handing me a set of keys gleaming under the porch light. "The smart home system has been completely reset. Only your biometrics and phone will have access now." I entered my house, truly mine for the first time in days. The space felt different, like it had been holding its breath for 4 years and could finally exhale. Blake always kept the curtains drawn, claiming sunlight gave him headaches, but really preferring the cave-like atmosphere for gaming marathons. I moved through each room, pulling open curtains, raising blinds, letting evening light flood spaces shrouded in his manufactured darkness. The living room windows revealed the garden I'd planted but barely enjoyed, always too tired from work, while Blake complained the outdoor furniture wasn't comfortable enough for his naps. The kitchen seemed larger without his protein powder containers cluttering surfaces, or his collection of energy drinks that left rings on my grandmother's wooden table. I opened windows sealed shut since winter, letting fresh air replace the stale mix of his cologne and supplements from his latest fitness phase. The next morning, Service Master arrived with a deep cleaning crew, not because the house was dirty, but because I needed every trace of Blake professionally erased. They moved through each room with industrial-grade equipment, steam cleaning carpets stained by spilled sports drinks, sanitizing bathrooms where he'd left expensive skincare products that never made him look younger, only more desperate. "We'll need to pay special attention to the master bedroom," I told the crew leader, Patricia, a woman who understood without explanation. She'd likely seen enough divorce cleanings to recognize the kind of sanitation that wasn't about germs, but about reclaiming space from someone who'd contaminated it with betrayal. While they worked, I drove to the storage unit where I'd kept my father's books and my grandmother's china, items Blake called clutter, a euphemism for empty spaces he was too lazy to decorate. By box, I reclaimed the pieces of my life I had hidden to make room for his ego, the complete works of Maya Angelou, books Blake dismissed as depressing, the Victorian secretary desk where my grandmother had penned letters, which Blake claimed ruined the modern aesthetic of the living room. My office transformation took 3 days. Blake's vision boards plastered across the walls, dreams of businesses that never launched, goals that never materialized, motivational quotes that never motivated action, were taken down. I rehung my achievement awards, the Partner of the Year plaque from Morrison Industries, the Excellence in Innovation certificate from the State Business Council, the framed first dollar from Cassidy Blackwood Consulting, earned not from dreams, but from work Blake never understood. His garage gym equipment had already been removed, leaving a vast empty space echoing with possibility. Within a week, contractors transformed it into the library I had always wanted, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with the collection Blake mocked as pretentious leather-bound editions and wasteful first editions he had tried to sell behind my back. A reading chair positioned perfectly to catch the morning light. The room smelled of wood polish and old paper, not rubber mats steeped in gym sock stench. Sarah flew in from Seattle to help with the final touches, bringing a bottle of champagne she'd been saving since our father's death. "You finally came to your senses," she said. popping the cork in my newly reclaimed kitchen. We drank from my grandmother's crystal glasses, ones Blake wanted to sell because nobody uses crystal anymore. News of Blake's eviction spread it through professional networks without me lifting a finger. Emma mentioned Patterson Industries inquiring about the sudden change in my emergency contact information. Jennifer Martinez's husband worked at the golf club where Blake had spent countless afternoons networking, and word quickly spread about his revoked membership. Even the owner of Blake's favorite restaurant reached out, cautiously asking if the corporate account was still active for client dinners. It was, just not with Blake's authorization. Jessica Reeves posted a cryptic Instagram story about spotting red flags and when someone can't even cover a coffee run. She publicly blocked Blake, making sure Mutual Connections saw her dismissal. His carefully crafted image as a successful entrepreneur crumbled faster than his legal case. LinkedIn showed he viewed my profile 17 times in a single week, but his own profile vanished after his post about new chapters, and fresh opportunities was screenshotted and shared in private chats with laughing emojis. 6 months later, on a warm September evening, I hosted my first dinner party since reclaiming my home. Rachel arrived early with her wife, bringing wine worth more than Blake's monthly gym membership. Emma came with her husband carrying homemade lasagna in the dish Blake banned from our kitchen because carbs didn't align with his fitness goals. Mrs. Chin brought her famous dumplings, the ones Blake called too ethnic for his palate. We gathered around my dining room table, the one Blake wanted to replace with something modern and meaningless. Candlelight reflected off my grandmother's china. The plates Blake used as props in his final performance now served their true purpose, bringing people together. Conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by genuine laughter, not the forced networking chuckles Blake practiced in the mirror. Rachel raised her glass at dessert, a chocolate souffle I made myself in my reclaimed kitchen. To Cassidy, she said, who proved the best revenge isn't destroying someone who wronged you, but protecting what was always yours and letting them destroy themselves. Her toast echoed through my house, my actual house, where every room held my choices, memories, and future. Blake tried to steal it all with paper weapons and rehearsed speeches. Instead, he learned what happens when performance meets preparation, when pretense collides with patience, and when someone who thinks they're taking everything realizes they never had anything to take. If the story of calculated revenge kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button now. My favorite moment? When Blake's attorney screamed, "Do you have any idea what you just let her do?" After realizing his client signed away everything for a house he never owned. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this.